that well in early voting, which is based on the current early voting results out of each state. So I will get right into today's video. I will be discussing why I don't think the Democrats are doing that well in early voting, why that might be the case, and who I expect to win the midterms just simply based on these results. So I'm going to start off with looking at the early voting in each state. I'm going to be talking about the more surprising results here. So the first surprising result is Pennsylvania. Democrats have cast about 72% of the total votes. Now, I don't know how accurate this number is, given the fact that Pennsylvania has an atrocious early voting results. Their early voting is just not accurate at all whatsoever. Democrats also had about at least 70% of the votes in the two, actually closer to 80% of the votes according to the early voting results in the state of Pennsylvania, as they're a state that typically, although a very competitive state, is not a state that has really good early voting results. But nonetheless, this 72% margin is still interesting. Another interesting number I want to take a look at is the state of Oregon with a competitive governor's election. Democrats are only leading by about 8% in the state of Oregon according to early voting, which is very concerning. Democrats led by about 20% in early voting in the state of Oregon in 2020, thus this significantly worse number for the Democratic Party will spell trouble for the Democratic candidates in the Oregon governor race and the House elections, in which Oregon has 3 competitive House seats, specifically 2 closer to the Portland suburbs. Another state I consider pretty surprising actually is the state of North Dakota, in which Democrats only have 11% of the votes. Now, North Dakota is not a really competitive state in any elections, practically speaking, but I still think it's interesting how Democrats are down 55%, and they're generally one of their strong areas in an election cycle. The final state I will take a look at is the state of Florida, with also quite surprising results. The GOP is up by 3% in early voting. Now, Florida is a state that typically more voters would use early voting as a system. That's why Florida results came in very early in 2020. I do expect the results to come in very early in 2022 election as well. But it's still surprising how the GOP is leading in early voting in the state by about 3% as well, because this is typically not an area that Republicans do very well in terms of just where the votes are coming from. Republicans mainly get their large boost of votes in election day votes. Democrats do well in early voting and in mail-in ballots. So that will be that. Now, looking not only at the party registration here, which has Democrats at 46, Republicans at 35, this is just not good for Democrats. They're leading by 11 points, but I expected them to lead by a margin of closer to 20 points, as that was what happened in 2020. That really shows that Democrats are really not engaged in this election, which is a good thing for the Republican Party. Now look at early voting in terms of age. This is even more concerning for the Democratic Party. Just looking at this here, over half of the voters that voted in early voting are 65 or older. That is a really bad thing for the Democratic Party, just given the fact that 53 typically they make up about 25% of the electorate. Now they're having 53% of the early voting. That tells me that Republicans are actually turning out in early voting, which is not a good thing, because this is the strongest piece of voting block for the Democratic Party. Early voting typically is about a 60-40 split for the Democratic Party, yet 53% of the votes coming from early voting is in a traditionally Republican group. Not only that, a combined close to 80% of voters are over 50 in terms of age that are currently voting in early voting, and only 5% are between 18 and 29. Now, regardless of the reason, this is not good for the Democratic Party. They should have a far larger amount of voters that are coming out to support them, which really, according to current numbers, that just does not look like to be the case. And also, 23 million ballots nationally just a week before election day is just really bad for the Democratic Party. Now, in terms of gender here, this is roughly what you'll expect, but I think women is also really below the expectations. I expected women to be about 55% because they're more Democratic leading, while men to be at about 45% because they're more Republican leading. But now looking at this, women is barely leading in many of these states here. And this is just not a good thing. If we look at some competitive states, while some of them, their Democrats are doing well. For example, Florida, women is at 54%, Georgia, women is at 55%, Pennsylvania, women is at 57%. These are states that Democrats are doing well in. Michigan, 56%. However, when you look at the general picture, they should be leading by more in these swing states to make them feel confident about the final general election. And finally, the vote type. 59% of these votes are mail-in, while 41% are in person. This is very interesting because in states like Utah, Oregon, these are states that pretty much enforce that you must use mail-in voting to mail in your ballots. Over states like Tennessee, they're forcing you, or a state like Hawaii, they're forcing you to put these votes in person. Now, for some competitive states here, for example, Pennsylvania, 100% of the ballots are mailed in. So, I don't see much according to this, but it is still an interesting thing to look at. Now, another concerning thing for the Democratic Party. Just looking at this, early voting numbers lag behind 2018 during week 1 of early voting. Just looking at some of these results here, I had a number here that is the case. Travis County in the state of Texas, a race that is semi-competitive in 2022. Looking at this, Travis County early voting is just not going well for them. 27% of voters already voted at this time where the article was published back in 2018. However, only 18.7% of the voters in 2022 has voted throughout the first 7 days of early voting in Travis County in the state of Texas, which is where Austin is allocated at. In 2018, they had more than 200,000 votes. In 2022, they have less than 170,000. Despite registered voters, that number climbing by over 100,000 voters. Again, that is a very bad thing for the Democratic Party. But regardless, this is just the end of our video explaining why Republicans are doing well in terms of early voting. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.